So, through the combination of good timing and public goodwill, Margaret would go on to become the face of birth control, even up until the end of her life. I mean, even up until last year. If you mentioned Margaret Sanger, people were like, oh my God, she's like Jesus. You know, like they would just lose their goddamn heads over her. People were thinking she is just a literal saint. But hold your horses, pony boy. Calm down. Calm your tits. Chill. Okay? Because one of her most popular beliefs was that there was a link between overpopulation and poverty. And Margaret would spend many years trying to help poverty-stricken minority communities across the world to get better access to birth control. This was her goal: get everybody birth control and we will eliminate poverty. Now, don't get me wrong, birth control was technically around at this time. Women had the option to get sterilized, but sterilization is a very permanent option, and it's just not realistic for everybody. So Margaret, she wanted something easier, something that, someone could just take at home, like a pill. Oh my God, But Margaret has the ideas, right? But she needs help. She needs help from someone who has a lot of money, someone with a lot of power, and someone who can make all of her dreams come true. One of those people, well, Mr. Clarence Gamble. Oh, doesn't that sound familiar? Well, have you heard of Procter & Gamble, P&G, DuPont, remember? Well, Mr. Clarence Gamble was quite the millionaire who also had an obsession with believing overpopulation and poverty were linked together. Mr. Gamble started looking into birth control as a way to control populations that he considered had high birth rates. Oh, Margaret and Clarence, they go way back. They had worked together once before. She knew he'd be a good partner because they both had the same beliefs. And Clarence Gamble, at this point, had already been building women's health clinics around the world as a way to keep the population low in poor communities. So Clarence Gamble's got the clinics, but Margaret needs someone with the brains, the noggin, So that's when she finds Gregory Pincus, a scientist obsessed with reproduction, and he was also quite concerned with overpopulation affecting the world. Margaret was quite impressed with his resume, and with the help of some funding, she was able to create the pill with Gregory Pincus. Margaret and Pincus have the pill, Gamble has the clinics to administer the pill to a much larger audience. Baby, we're in business. We are in business. They're like the little trio of mean girls almost. I don't know. Anyways. So again, just like any new drug in the market, it has to be tested. So where are they gonna test it is what they're thinking. Well, that's when they land on the idea of testing in Puerto Rico. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why Puerto Rico? I know, why Puerto Rico? So here's why Puerto Rico was recommended. This is what they say. For starters, they had no laws against birth control. It was also one of the most densely populated areas in the world, and Gamble already funded a network of clinics there. Great. No laws, tons of test subjects, and convenient places to test them. Great. During this time, in 1937, the Puerto Rico government was also making the connection that overpopulation was leading to poverty. More poor people means less rich people in their eyes. Doesn't that sound familiar, though? Well, it should if you've been listening, okay? Because that's the same belief Margaret, Pincus, and Gamble had. Super, great, awesome, Another reason they wanted to go to Puerto Rico, they believed that the women there were uneducated and they couldn't handle a simple birth control pill. Yeah, it was gonna be too complicated for them to take because according to them, not only are they poor, but they're dumb as hell. But Pincus had this great idea. It was like a light bulb moment to him. If Puerto Rican women can figure out how to take this pill, then that means anybody can do it, proving that this would be the simplest and easiest choice for women. At this time, the government in Puerto Rico was pushing sterilization on women. In other words, the women were getting their tubes tied, and this was, again, to help with the overpopulation because, again, they didn't want more poor people in this area. The Puerto Rican government was really pushing propaganda that said if you don't have a small family, you're gonna be poor and you're gonna make Puerto Rico worse. So they're like beating this into their heads from a young age. It's literally like in their textbooks, PSAs, it's all over the damn place. Kind of like how they did to us, you remember? Like if you don't go to college, you're not gonna succeed in life, you're not gonna get a real job, therefore you're not gonna live the American dream. It was like that to them. It was normal to them. Something you had to do in order to succeed in life. Get sterilized. And they couldn't afford it. Over half of the population was considered poor. Sterilization was such a normal thing for the women that clinics were literally installed within the factories that the women worked at. So like you're on your lunch break, you have a little smoke, okay, you meet Dr. Bimbo, get your tubes tied, call the kids, just a normal Tuesday. The doctors technically, they didn't lie to women about sterilization, but treated it like it was really their only option. So when the pill came up, the women finally felt like they had another choice. And Pincus, remember the scientist, he knew it made them perfect for the project because rather than the permanent solution of sterilization, they had an easier option. They could just take a pill. So around the year 1955, Pincus, the scientist, he made the pill and started testing it in small villages around Puerto Rico. Now, a lot of what happened at these trials was like one big secret, but what we do know was that some of the quote unquote subjects were the women that had already given birth in one of Gamble's clinics. You see, they had their information on file, so they called them up. Ring, 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 hello, and they're asking, hey, would you be interested in trying a new form of birth control? It's a simple pill. You could just take it. Doesn't that sound splendid? And they're like, oh my God, yeah, like, I wanna try this new thing. That sounds so easy, I'll be right there. In a documentary called La Operacion, a woman named Donna Maria, she tells a story of clinic staff going door to door, asking if the women at home would be interested in a miracle pill that would stop you from getting pregnant. And they purposely targeted the areas that were considered very poor and uneducated. They were kind of like the Mormons, going door to door, knock, knock, who's there? And like, instead of offering salvation, they're offering a new form of sterilization. But let's be clear, they said yes to this because of the fear and propaganda that was pounded into their noggin, which conditioned them to agree. And this was such an easier option than getting your tubes tied. All you're saying is I have to swallow a pill? Fuck yeah, sign me up, like, hello. Now, this sounds too good to be true. How do you qualify for this new form of sterilization? Well, you had to be a woman under 40. Most were in their 20s, and they also had to have at least 2 children of their own. Reason being, they wanted to stop these women from having more children and cut them off at just 2. They don't need to be bringing more poor children into this world. Nay, nay. How could you? The first trial went on for months, and 22% ended up dropping out. Now, they were dropping out because 17% of them were experiencing some pretty serious side effects. Bloating, weight gain, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, bleeding, stomach aches. Oh my God, yeah, really bad headaches. Now, I'm sure some of you listening at home are like, that's what I experienced today. But the first pill had huge amount of hormones, which made the effects way worse than you and I have probably ever experienced. Now, Pincus, the scientist, and his other scientist friends, they brushed off the side effects, saying that the Puerto Rican women were being too stupid to follow directions. No, I'm not making this up. In official documents, it was said that the women were unreliable and the effects were just in their head. Yeah, they did that. This was actually a really big deal because if the pill was gonna be sold in the United States, ignoring the side effects, not only were they putting women in Puerto Rico at risk, but now they were putting women everywhere at risk. On top of that, they weren't even telling the women that the pill was experimental in the first place. So many of the women didn't even know what they were getting themselves into. If Pincus, the scientist, pulled this shit in mainland United States, his ass would be arrested for hiding this little truth from his subjects. But because this is Puerto Rico, I guess it's fair game. Many residents of Puerto Rico were Catholic, and talking about sex and sterilization, it wasn't just like a comfortable conversation you have with friends and family. Getting an abortion was considered a forever sin in their eyes, but taking birth control or getting sterilized was like a one-time offense in God's eyes. So a lot of them said nothing at all. They weren't even sure what the hell to do. Plus, on top of this, the press was calling these trials racist because they were using women of color as their guinea pigs for white medicine. So the women of Puerto Rico are just being pulled in like every direction. The Catholic Church is telling them, it's a sin. The press is saying it's racist. The government is saying you have to do this or you won't succeed. What the fuck? Like, what are they supposed to do? I don't know. They're being pulled in so many directions. The pill trials continued on, and then in 1960, the official birth control pill was released to the public. Groundbreaking moment. But back in Puerto Rico, they continued these trials up until 1964. Now, it seems a little questionable why they would continue these trials if the pill was already released. So we looked a little deeper. And friends, this is where it takes a very dark turn.